All right, everybody, we've got another very special guest for y'all. Returning special guest. It has once again been far too long since we had Mr. Cavan Scott back, but welcome to the show, Cavan.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Um, yeah, and it's always fun because we've done this about 3 or 4 weeks in a row now. We're like, man, Cavan. We definitely had Cavan on just a year or two ago, and I think it's been like 4 or 5 years ago.
No,
So,
but isn't
uh,
that? I mean, that's just the life of comics, isn't it? You sort of go, "Oh
right.
yeah, that was
It's,
yesterday," and then you, "Oh no, no."
And
it's
if we talk, yeah,
I always say when I'm talking to people, like I just want to book so many people on the show all the time, and I
yeah,
can't do interviews every day. So,
yeah,
Mm.
so yeah, a lot of people fall through the cracks sometimes.
it's
But
and it's crazy because like if we wanted to talk about all the books you worked on since then, we'd be here for I think like 4 or 5 hours because you've done quite a bit.
yes.
Uh,
It's been a hectic couple of years. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and as someone, I mean, because when I think when we first talked to you, we had talked about some of the Star Wars stuff, your
Mm.
Doctor Who stuff, Pacific Rim, because you've kind of touched on
Yes.
all those different universes.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I don't know if I asked this the first time, but like, how did you become the guy kind of navigating all those different fandom universes? Like how did that come about?
I mean, it's largely Doctor Who. So
Yeah.
I I have been a geek all my life and obsessed about these universes, and especially Who, Trek, and Star Wars. And it was, yeah, I mean, it's scary now. So my first professional gig was on a Doctor Who thing, which was now a quarter of a century ago. And I go, like, no, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Soon it'll be the same amount of time as the original series was on telly.
Oh
That's
man,
just
yeah.
that just doesn't compute.
That's
And so,
crazy.
yeah, I mean, I got into it because it was during the wilderness years that we had in Doctor Who, right before the show, when the show went away and then came back, and at a
Mhm.
time where I didn't think it was ever going to come back. There'd
Wow.
been a TV movie starring Paul McGann, and that'd come and gone, and it was like so. A group of people got a license for a pittance to do Doctor Who audio dramas, Big Finish Productions, with the original Doctor and the original companions. And yeah, again, the BBC was like, yeah, of course, yeah, if you want to do that. I mean, why would you?
Yeah.
Um, and then so I got into writing that, and it was I'd written what we now know as fan fiction for like Doctor Who fanzines, and an awful one. Someone reminded me the other day of the Seventh Doctor turning up in Gotham the night that Bruce Wayne's parents have been killed to give him some advice. It's like,
I love
really?
that.
That was, yeah. I'm hoping that never sees the light of day.
That is amazing.
And so yeah, I'd sort of like moved from sort of writing fan fiction to, and it was that time where you could move from doing fan stuff through to professional stuff because actually the fans were taking over. Because this, I mean, now we're sort of used to the fans have taken over and geeks
Right.
have won. Um, but again, it was like a group of people got together to do Doctor Who, and because they love Doctor Who and they wanted to be more of it. And we now live in a world. Do you want to be more Doctor Who? There is so much Doctor Who now. But at that time, it was like we were just talking about Rom, thanks to Chris's wonderful T-shirt. There, it was like there was a time, where as a Doctor Who fan, you were starved for content, and you, especially when you wanted to hear the Doctors or see the Doctors. So I was very lucky to get in at that point. Then when the show came back, they needed people who knew how Doctor Who worked,
That's
both in
awesome.
front of the cameras and behind. So I sort of ended up sort of moving away from my job, my actual job, which was working in magazines, to working on things like Doctor Who, and it literally spun off from that. And once you've done work on one big franchise, um, usually other franchises come along because they need people who
Right.
have that particular set of skills, not to quote Taken, but that can cope with. We don't have to kill people usually, but when we do it in a very, very geek friendly way. It's yeah, you can cope with notes, you can cope with writing in someone else's universe where you haven't got the final say in and all the things that make a tie-in writer or a licensed writer successful. So I mean, yeah, I mean, you can literally draw the line from that first Doctor Who thing through to Star Wars and
Wow.
everything I've been doing since. So yeah, that was it really. It was someone had given me a chance when I had no real experience of doing any of this stuff
That's
on a
amazing.
brand at that time that was dead.
Wow.
there was,
Yeah.
it was, Doctor Who was never going to come back, apparently. So,
It,
and here we
it,
are.
and just all I can think about is now we'll refer to Cavan as the Liam Neeson of comics.
I quite like that idea.
That's
I mean,
pretty good.
if I'm gonna be anyone,
It's pretty
Liam
good.
Neeson's not a
Yeah.
bad person to be.
And I know, talking about Star Wars now, I know Chris is a huge fan of all the comics, but he's read some of the High Republic stuff. Can you talk about the new book coming out?
Yes.
And
Well, we're in the middle of the last. It's crazy for me to even say these words out loud. So we're in the middle of Fear of the Jedi, which is the last run of the High Republic Marvel comic. And then we said it was the last run, and we obviously lied because there's one extra afterwards, which comes
nice,
out a month after the final novel, Charles Soule's novel, Trial of the Jedi, which sort of wraps up the initiative. It wraps it up, but then we need a coda, and that's what the comic is. And so the coda is tying up a lot of the things that have been happening on the comic line, and a lot of the other things that are coming in. Other parts of the High Republic as well, and it's a celebration and a thank you for the fans who have seen, because I think by the end of it, it'll be like, well, there's 41 issues of the Marvel run, and then there's Daniel's run over at IDW and Dark Horse, and then there's, all the other specials and things. So, it's when I look back on what we've done over the last few years in the High Republic, I mean, there is, I've lost track. I mean, it's over 20 novels, it's hundreds of comics, audio dramas, TV shows, it's like, it's madness. But to think it is coming to an end. So yeah, so that's going to be the final issue of the current iteration of the High Republic. Because if I know Star Wars, and I do, no,
a little bit.
nothing is really dead. I mean,
Hmm.
Star Wars, and part of the job for us working on the High Republic was to open up this new era of the Star Wars galaxy, this a different time to tell stories. And there are plenty of stories left to be told. So yeah, the finale, as it's called, is the finale of this part of the High Republic, and then after that, who knows? It's going to be interesting to see where they go next.
How has that been in the kind of writers' room that you guys have formed there from the beginning to now? Like introducing this new era of Star Wars and doing something that me as a Star Wars fan has been asking for, which is to try to get away from the Skywalkers as much as possible. It's one of the things I loved about like Knights of the Republic and those initiatives back in the day. How was that experience as a whole for you?
It's been, I mean, it's really hard at the minute for me to really put it into words. And I'm a writer. That's what I do. That is my particular side of skill. And they're failing for me at the minute because it is really odd because it's been so much part of my life in the last few years. And we've been working on it since 2018. And, it's weird now because the sort of the room is getting smaller because, as people are people have final books out now, and we're getting to the point where I think there is only now childhood novel, Daniel's last issues, and my last issues, and then that's this project done. And it is weird. So, and obviously I stopped writing this the end of last year. I'm obviously doing art and, pencils. So it's a really odd feeling. Um, but it was from the off, it was exciting. We were given so much freedom, which I think people imagine what working for Lucasfilm is like and for Disney. And yes, absolutely, there is a lot of times where you can't do things because something else is happening somewhere else and you get told that and you don't know what that thing is. Um, with this at the beginning, we were given so much freedom to really, come up with things. And it's been interesting to sort of experience that as Star Wars, The High Republic became part of Star Wars, as a whole. So, we've seen things like The Acolyte coming out, Young Jedi Adventures, that's affected the way, because it's not just books and comics anymore. We've had the video games, and so it's been really interesting. And this is purely just from a fan turned pro to sort of see the machine working and see how things change over time and get a little bit of an insight of it. Because obviously we're not massively within we're in part of the Lucasfilm family, but there's a lot going on we know nothing about, and for very good reasons. And so so yeah, it's been interesting to see how it's grown and how it's been incorporated into Star Wars. I don't think I really imagined that would happen. I think I always thought it was going to be this thing over here that was going to be part of Star Wars. But it's starting to see things turn up in other parts of Star Wars now. I mean, from Skeleton Crew and hearing about, and things like there's just like little references, and you go, oh no, that's us. There we are,
Yeah,
and so it stops being something that is us, and it just starts being part of Star Wars, which is
Yeah.
from an 50-year-old man friend fan of the franchise. It's incredible to know that whatever happens, there is always going to be a little bit that the part of this big tapestry is going to be a couple of stitches that I worked on,
yeah,
and the stuff that we've been doing is building. You mentioned Knights of the Old Republic. I mean, that was a massive influence for us, and everything. I mean, I think I've made it quite clear. I was a big expanded universe fan and remain a big
Hmm.
expanded universe fan to this day. And so to be able to build on, on those elements and build some of the stuff that was moved out of canon, and I don't, that entire conversation's another conversation. But being able to sort of like to be able to pull things in and go, oh, what if we did this with it? And now knowing that there is things coming now which are building on what we've done, it's just a really odd feeling because you sort of realise that, yeah, this is a franchise, just like all of these franchises, that is going to just go and go and go as long as it's allowed to change and evolve and build on what's gone beyond before it. And yeah, and I'm just very proud to have this part in it. It's been very intensive. I'm sort of looking forward to July, and I'm sort of like not looking forward to July because I want it all to be out there as a thing that people can go experience. As I say, it's been a job. It's been my day job for the last since 2018. So I'm looking forward to some new challenges and doing some new things. But at the same time, yeah, I'm going to miss it because it has been so. I'm going to miss that group of people because every week, every day, there's been a bit of conversation going on because we've been working on something and that's not going to be there anymore. And it already isn't there a bit now because people are moving on. And as I say, the sort of writers' rooms winding down because people have done their job. So yeah, so it's a bittersweet feeling at the minute.
Yeah, I think as a fan of it, it's been cool to see the birth of it as it's going on. And when you mentioned video games, when Jedi Survivor came out and I was playing it, and I love those games just because of what
Mm,
they are and who you get to play as. But when High Republic moments started popping up, I was a little kid again. Like, oh my God,
mm.
like there's so many people playing
Yeah,
this that don't understand what's going on. I've been reading these books and it's been an amazing journey as a fan. And like
yeah,
you said, bittersweet to see the ending coming, but
yeah, but again, there'll be something else along, and that's what I
yeah.
love. That's why I love. That's why I'm a lifelong fan of these universes because it does keep changing and it does
Yeah.
keep building on what's gone before. And yeah, and it's interesting because what I think what you just described there with the game with Survivor is exactly how I always view working in any of these established universes. That it should be. Um, My friend Cy Spura always talks about, Easter eggs and references are either, it shouldn't be a stick, they should always be a carrot. So it should be a reward for someone. It shouldn't be, oh no, you've never read those books, therefore you must go and read them all now. And it's like, no, that's not what it is. It's if you've read them, you're getting something else. You've invested in something in it, you're getting something else. But if you haven't read them, you're just getting a cool thing anyway. And with Star Wars and Who and Marvel and DC, a lot of it's just been built into the formula right from the off. From the moment we heard Obi-Wan say, fought with your father in the Clone Wars, like the what was now? Please
uh-huh,
explain
yeah.
that,
Yep.
and the same with Doctor Who, when he first meets the Sontarans and he thought, you're in this war, the Ruton, and you go, with the what now? And
Yeah.
so these things, these Easter eggs are built in before they're even Easter eggs.
Hmm.
And that's just great world building. And so yeah, it's been, as I say, I've dropped things into Star Wars that I'm never going to explain. And it's interesting that like, I'm starting to see stuff that's coming out of Star Wars when it's things that are being picked up with and being run with. And I love that. I absolutely love that.
That's amazing.
And I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, like, Star Wars kind of wrapping up and moving on to something else. I guess the big reason we're here is to talk Gwenpool #1, which is, as you know, as you're listening it came out today in comic book shops. So, how did that project come about for you? Was that something you were looking to get into?
The actual Gwenpool gig came because I just worked with Jordan White, the editor, on
Mhm.
Venom War Zombiotes, which was a fun little mini that I did as part of the Venom War event. And again, that comes directly from the fact I've been working with Marvel for years and Star Wars, and I was coming to the end of my Star Wars run, and they were very nicely saying, what else would you like to do? And there was a couple of gigs. There was Union Jack and Zombie came out of it, and I really enjoyed working with Jordan, and he immediately came back to me with another series, but I couldn't quite fit it in at that point. I was really sad, but it was like, again, it was tying in. It was just the time where I was sort of putting the finishing touches to the High Republic, and I didn't want to sort of take my attention away from that too much. So as a true freelancer, I went, well, that's it then. I'm never going to work for Marvel again. And because I said no. And then he came back and went, I've got, can we talk tomorrow? I've got an idea and I'm not sure what you're going to think about it. And so I said, okay, that's ominous. And we got onto a Zoom call and he went, okay, so Gwenpool, you knew I read it. I read the original run, and I loved it, the Chris Hastings run. And then he went, okay, so what if I said Gwenpool versus a resurrected Gwen Stacy who's also a Wolverine? And I was like, what now? And that was the beginning of the conversation. And for people who don't know, the Gwenpool series that is starting today, if you're watching this today, that's about what it is. Gwen Stacy is back, and she has somehow gone through the Weapon X program. Our favourite reality twister, the original Gwenpool, who's very much still the hero of this book, no matter what people have thought from the marketing, has to cope with this fact. And out of anyone in the Marvel universe, she knows what that means, because she knows that Gwen Stacy should not be alive, and she should definitely not have a single claw coming out of her hand like Ryan Reynolds did in
Yeah.
Wolverine Origins. So Gwenpool knows that something's up, and the world around Gwenpool is changing. So that, yeah, it was one of those moments when I was like, I'm not sure I could even begin to work out how to tell this story, but I'll go away, have a think, and we threw around a lot of ideas, some of which made it, some of which didn't. And that's where we are now with Gwenpool issue 1.
And you kind of got into it there, but I'd love to hear more about when he brings to you, we want to resurrect Gwen Stacy proper. What are you feeling there? Like, that's a lot. For Marvel fans, that's one of the untouchables. So
yeah, absolutely. I was like, they're going to hate me, and some people now do. But hey, I've worked on Star Wars for the last few years.
Right,
I'm used to people hating me.
Like, Cavan's got some experience with that.
Yeah. It's it's daunting because again, so when I started reading comics, Marvel comics especially, Gwen Stacy was a legend even then. So I was born the same year she died, and so I knew her for reading Marvel Tales reprints and things like that. And I think even at that point, she was still someone they talked about. So it was rather. So yeah, it's the funny thing is I didn't put Peter Parker in the story because I was like, well, they're not going to want me to put Spider-Man in this book,
Right?
And because he's the crown jewels.
Yeah.
So I pitched an entire story that didn't have Peter in it, and they were like, "Where's Spider-Man?" I was like, "Yeah, but you probably should have mentioned that right at the beginning. That I could do Spider-Man." But then the challenge becomes, obviously I'm going to say yes, I will write Spider-Man. Okay, go on, but I'm my back, fine. But then I still have to go, this is still a Gwenpool book.
Right.
And I think there's been a lot of people who've reacted to the news going, oh, it's just another Spider book. And it is absolutely a Spider book in the fact that Spider-Man's in it and it has Gwen Stacy in it. But this is still Gwenpool's book, the original Gwenpool. And what the tightrope I've had to walk with this is to do something that's hopefully new, something that shows the legacy of the characters that we're bringing into it, but also that Gwenpool is still very much the same character that people fell in love with in those, I mean, she is a bit the character who will not die, unlike Gwen Stacy, who has died before and now isn't so dead. Gwenpool just keeps going because people just love that central character. If you've not read Gwenpool, the concept of Gwenpool is that she isn't Gwen Stacy, which everyone thinks she is. She isn't just a Gwen Stacy who's become a Deadpool, which is now what Gwen Stacy actually is. Um, she is someone who's a comic fan who's fallen into a comic somehow. We still don't really know how that's happened. And so can work magic within comics because she understands how comics works, and she can literally jump out of comics into the gutter space and then jump back in, and we play with that a bit, especially in issue
Yeah,
one.
you do.
And she's a joy to write from that point of view because again she knows exactly as soon as that mask comes off and that she sees it's Gwen Stacy, she's like, "Well, then what? No, 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 this should not be happening," because she knows what that means. And so she's an interesting character because she knows all the tropes. I mean, I think canonically she's read pretty much everything that Marvel's ever done, except for Deadpool, because she didn't like him, which I think is amazing. So, and yeah, we are absolutely playing with the fact that people think that she is Gwen Stacy anyway. So, there's a lot of meta going on, which there always is in Gwenpool. And I can
Yep.
see why some of the marketers make people go, "What? But I thought I did," brain dribbling out of ears. But that's very much part of the story as well. It's very much,
So
it's keeping that central to the entire thing.
I I want to say we were blessed to have a review copy ahead of the interview, and
Hmm.
I will say that while Chris is the more Marvel fan and I'm more the DC, and we kind of read stuff in between, I don't think I ever would have picked this book up. Just to be honest, because I wasn't much in the Deadpool space or the
No.
Gwen Stacy space or the Spider
Hmm.
verse, but it was a lot of fun, and I want to just talk about the art too, because you talked about the breaking of the fourth wall
Hmm.
and the panel breaking, and Stefano Nessi's art is absolutely amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, he
Yeah, I
did
mean,
such a great job.
because the difficulty of the art, any art, because when I first started working on this, we didn't have an artist assigned. Quite often
Hmm.
that's what happens. You don't always know who the artist's going to be. And so when I was writing it, and part of the point of issue one is the fact that Gwenpool's world is gradually changing into a more darker, grim dark,
Yeah, Frank Miller.
type. In fact, Frank Miller, I mean, she
Yep,
literally calls it out.
that was awesome.
The level of violence is getting harsher. The level of consequences is getting harsher, especially for Gwenpool as well. And we said right from the that's going to be a really tough ask for any writer, sorry, for any artist to do. And Stefano has just pulled it out of the bag, and the stuff that's coming as well. I can't obviously talk about too much going down the line, but he has just embraced it, and I'm so much happier as soon as we've got an artist on board because then I can start writing to what they can do. And so
Right.
seeing immediately how he was going to work, um, I think I'd written pretty much the entire 5 issue run before he came on board. So we definitely, when it was first solicited and we first had that announcement, Gwen Stacy's alive, it was all written. And Stefano was a couple of issues in. But I could go back and tweak some of the stuff in issue one because I was like, oh, okay, this is how it's going to work, and that kind of thing. But the funny thing is that we did this announcement. Gwen Stacy's back. She's a Wolverine. And obviously, there were a lot of people going, "You what? You
Yeah.
joking?" It's like, this is like, oh, the 1990s called and they want their heroes back. And
Yep.
haven't we seen this before? And all I could think was, you're literally quoting the comic and you don't realize it because
Right.
those moments are in Gwenpool issue one. Because,
Yep.
as I said, Gwenpool knows what she's talking about. So
Hmm.
she looks at this character and goes, "You are kidding me." So it was so funny to see it actually happening. And it has been very much planned, and I sort of like was sitting there clenching, going, "Is this going to work?" Because I knew that originally we added what was the preview pages. We actually added to the issue, so for the again long before the announcement, but it was a last minute thing. Going, oh, we should probably see the dark Gwenpool character first. So you basically, it's exactly what you expect. And the funny thing is, people who have read it have said to me, "That's what I thought Gwenpool already was," because they just thought Gwenpool was Gwen Stacy as Zephyr. And it's like,
Yeah.
yes, what they don't realize, and a lot of people have been quite angry about that preview as well, because comics. And what they don't realize, they turn the page and there's the original Gwenpool right there. And that was again, it's very much part of what this story is. And what you can do with Gwenpool is talk about these kind of things,
Yeah.
talk about this kind of storytelling. And then it was very important to me. As soon as we get to Gwenpool, she talks exactly like she's always talked. She does exactly what she's always done, and everyone else is looking at her going, "What?" Except for Kate Bishop, who actually just rolls her eyes and goes, "Yeah, whatever. You're being weird,"
Yeah.
because they have a history,
Right.
so they know each other.
Right. Exactly. That's
Yeah, and I guess I need to come out because famously in our corner of the comics world, I am not a Deadpool fan and I'm not a Gwenpool fan. But reading this, I think the thing that I enjoyed about it, outside of the stunning art that Mike talked about, was it having the dichotomy of all the characters you had there. She didn't feel as over the top as I've seen her in other books, while at the same time making those references throughout it that she's known for. Mike mentioned the Frank Miller one, which made me laugh, being a gigantic Frank Miller fan, and some others. How is it dealing with a character like that who is very meta and is talking to the audience as if they're in the room with them, as opposed to the new Gwenpool, who isn't like that?
No, it's interesting because I feel like I'm as people who are listening to this or watching it, I am British. I grew up British comics, and it's a real trope in British comics about characters talking to the reader. When I grew up in the 70s and 80s, we had a lot of humor comics, and it was absolute something you did on the page or you read on the page. And I ended up writing for those books like The Beano and Dandy, where the characters would have conversations with the reader, and the reader would have a balloon coming in saying "reader's voice," and there would be a conversation. I wrote a series of stories for a character called Banana Man, who US people probably won't know.
that sounds awesome
UK,
though.
UK. So Banana Man's the man of Peel, and basically it's the story of Eric Wimp, who's a kid who eats a banana and becomes Banana Man.
Oh my God.
And he is the lamest superhero in the world. He's actually got all the powers that you need, but he's incredibly dim. And part of the gig for that is the fact the reader knows he's really, really dim and is constantly berating him. And so that was just normal for me. That comics had the reader in there, and and British humour comics at the time would quite often have the characters, like our version of Dennis Menace, which is different to the US version of Dennis Menace, talking to the artist as if the artist could come in and redraw the page. So a lot of our comic characters knew they were in comics. So actually, I sort of trained myself away from that. And now I've ended up writing for a character who does that naturally.
Okay.
So
Wow.
it's really weird, and I love it. And I love the fact I can write a character who can reference how to draw comics the Marvel way in a Marvel
Yeah.
comic.
That was pretty awesome. Yeah.
And it's in a very different way to Deadpool. Because, yeah, Deadpool knows he's in a comic, but he's never experienced comics, whereas Gwenpool knows comics. And that's part of actually, it's quite tricky because you have to try and keep everything in the same way as like writing Sherlock Holmes and Doctor Who is hard because they're geniuses and you're not. With Gwenpool, she's read more comics than you. So you have to try and keep everything ahead of her so she's surprised. And the fact that actually part of this story is our Gwenpool, the original Gwen, but there are too many Gwens. Writing this was really hard. The scripts were all over the show. I was like, the real, that Gwen, the other Gwen, that's it, just Gwen.
This Gwen, that Gwen. That's funny.
It's, when you're writing her, she's not, especially in this story, she's just taken everything. It's far too blasé about everything. I mean, they start this issue in a proper like Avengers class moment, and she's just like, Paul, let's just deal with this,
Right.
And so my way of dealing with that was just to lean in it and make it even more. She knows how to get around every situation, and we see it's fair to say Gwenpool's never been as big as she is in issue one, and it's that situation of like if you've got that power set, that's what you can do.
Yep.
And so, but that will have consequences, and so we're starting to see what those consequences are.
Yeah.
So I hope everybody out there went and did exactly what I just did and Googled Banana Man,
Banana Man.
because you'll find Banana Man, the man of Peel.
Yep.
An amazing character design. And then I found the absolute Banana Man, Mike.
Yeah. I gotta.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that's was recently the Ned who now writes, Ned Hartley who now writes the Banana Man strip for the Beano. Yeah, he's forever I mean, God, they even had, this is a kids comic in the UK that is currently doing swipes at Trump and Doge and things like that, and it's just like
That's
in the
crazy.
funniest way possible, and it's just
Yeah.
like it's what British kids comics. It's an entire new world, and that's the one comic that's left of this entire generation of comics, and
Wow. That's
yeah, it's
amazing.
full of that kind of stuff.
It's a master class of character design too. Like
Yeah.
the
No, but
character
Banana
is
Man
so
is just
funny, but it's so
yeah.
perfect.
He's like he almost reminds me, just like looking at him, like a British Booster Gold.
Yeah, I mean, there is that. That's definitely. It's over the years as well. He has gone. He does do like proper. He changes. Sorry, I'll go back. I'll take a step back. This is
Oh,
not
okay.
gone the conversation that I
Right.
expected, but I'm loving it.
Okay.
So what happened in these things? That an artist, John Guerin was the name of the original Banana Man
Yeah.
artist. They draw it, and then every other artist after that apes the style of the artist, and that's the way
Oh,
it works. So
okay.
you don't usually get reinterpretations, but the current artist of Banana Man, they do stories where he will become like the Golden Age version, or he will
Wow.
become the Dark Knight version, or the
Oh,
Absolute
that's
version,
amazing. That is amazing.
and it will always snap back into the original John Gearing
Uh-huh.
Banana Man, which I grew up loving. Yeah, it's an entire thing. You should get
That's
me back on some days just talk about British comics,
yeah, I know.
because
I could
there's a world
yeah.
there that
Oh,
people don't, across the pond don't know,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, I have so many stories I could tell.
It
that's one of my favorites when we get people from overseas, whether it's Britain or any other country, to talk about like what comics are in their world because it's so much
Mm.
different than the world that we grew
yeah,
up in and live
France
in.
France as well. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Crazy
Yeah,
different.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Going back to Gwenpool,
yes. Sorry.
I just got
Yeah.
fascinated with Banana
No,
Man there for a
yeah, me
minute.
too.
Uh, I did really love the choice of characters in there too. You have I don't know who we can reveal or don't. I'll let you handle that part. But you have a cast of characters here and a villain that pops up that for me were just like phenomenal. The villain we so rarely see in the Marvel universe, and then the cast of characters. You mentioned Spider-Man, but then a few others show up that were just perfect for the
Yeah.
story you were telling in this first issue. I
Yeah.
thought was great.
So the main sort of like crew for Gwenpool, this series Gwenpool, is Spider-Man, Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, and Jeff the Shark, obviously, who was originally introduced in West Coast Avengers. Um, as far as the villain goes, oh yeah, it's Fin Fang Foom. I mean, it
Yeah.
was I, in my original pitch, it was Galactus, and
Oh, that's
I couldn't do that for reasons that I wasn't told why. But it was like you can't have Galactus, so you just need another giant character. I was like, well, I know who that's going to be. Um, to be fair, the only reason I put Galactus in because most of the time when I work on these things, it's like this might be the last chance I get to write in this universe. Therefore, I want to write everything I want to write.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting because again, I didn't put Spider-Man in the original pitch. It was someone else. I put some of the other characters from the original run in there. And when you work in this kind of universe, you are told sometimes, well, yeah, that's great, but we need it to be these characters because it teased off other stuff, and it's like So Kate works well because there's a history there. I mean, Kate first appeared in the original Gwenpool run. They were obviously West Coast Avengers together.
Hmm.
Um, and as I said, Kate is a character who knows sort of what Gwenpool's doing, but doesn't obviously believe it's a thing. So when Gwenpool turns and talks to the audience, she just goes, "Yeah, she's doing the Gwenpool thing. It's weird. We just let her get on with that." And there's a couple of moments in this series where she asks Gwen Poole to explain something, and she explains it in real world terms. She's like, "I have no idea what that means, but I'm just gonna run with it." And so they're a great double act to write because it is a proper straight man, comedy team up. And then you add the Spider-Man to it all, and I mean that was just a complete joy to write him in this situation. But again, the world is changing, and it's changing around Spider-Man as well, and he's perhaps not as central as he thinks he should. Not, no, Peter would never think he should be central, but it's not central as a story would usually be for him.
hmm
And so you get to play with that as well. And again, this history, we've seen these characters before. One of the first, I think it was in the second Gwenpool series, um, where Gwen realizes she could get cancelled at any minute, which means she will die. So decides the only way she can do it is unmask Spider-Man because everyone will read that comic. So again, there's a relationship there. She knows who he is. No one else does around him. So when she sees Gwen Stacy, she's the only person in the room who knows who that person is. Because let's face it, Gwen Stacy is just this blonde girl that's been dug up from somewhere as far as
Right.
everyone else in the Marvel universe is. They don't know who she is. Our Gwenpool does. Because
Mm.
our Gwenpool knows what that character means and
Mhm.
knows what that character means to the person in the spider costume over there. So it's, yeah, there's a lot going on.
Um, and just to back up to the part where you said you wanted to put Galactus in there, uh, was it
I just want,
not?
to be fair, I want to put Galactus in every story I
Yeah,
do.
same, same.
So,
As not a huge Marvel fan, but I'm a big
yeah,
Fantastic Four fan. But
yeah.
I would say was the person that stepped in and said no to Galactus. Did it happen to be Tom Brevoort? Because that seems like something.
No, I don't. I don't honestly know. I wasn't
Okay.
far up the chain. It was like it all came through Jordan.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
was there might be stuff going on with Galactus. There might be a Fantastic Four movie this year.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's probably all kinds of plans
A
that I
few
was
things.
stomping all over about having Galactus turn up in New York at that point.
Yeah.
But I had to try.
Yep.
I
Of
was pretty
course.
I was pretty safe. There wasn't a Fing Fan Foom movie going on, so
Yeah. I don't
Unfortunately.
think anybody's
but
touching that character for a while.
but they should, perhaps this might be why they come back to him. So you
I
never
hope
know.
so. I really hope
Yeah.
so. And for anybody watching, listening, as this episode dropped today, it's in your local comic shop. Gwenpool #1. And I wanted to. I had a couple more questions before we wrap up today. I don't know about you, Chris, but I wanted to ask you really quick about, because with a couple of these projects we talked about, you're not really flexing your horror stuff that you've done in the past. Are you looking to do any sort of horror scary project coming up? Or are you going to do maybe a creator owned something
So I've
in the
just
future?
got just finished Night of the Slashers with Magma, which is a love
Yep.
letter to slasher movies, which is coming out on trade. I think there's been a delay, but it's coming out this month. The one book I launched earlier in the year, and the Diamond situation torpedoed, was Godfather of Hell over at Vault,
Right.
which was definitely a horror gangster book. We had one issue out as floppy, and then because of the Diamond situation, Vault decided to change their model, and so it's being repackaged as a full book, full graphic novel, which is
Okay.
coming out next year now.
Good.
So we're still working on that at the minute. Yeah, I mean, I'm a horror writer at heart, and I've got a couple of projects outside of comics that
Hmm.
are horror related at the minute. Um, but actually, the stuff I've been doing for Marvel, I mean, Union Jack was very definitely
Yeah, that
horror
was,
based,
yeah, for sure. Yep.
thing, and Zombies was to a certain level. I mean, it's zombies in it, so yeah. But sometimes it's fun, as you say, it's like I don't want to always just be the horror guy, even though I
Hmm.
pretty much, am in
Right.
everything I pitch. It's too easy for me to pitch horror all the time. It's like, Gwenpool's given me a chance to do something new, and I've got another project down the line which is going to be something new again. So yeah, but I'm never that far away from horror.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I was. It's good to know about the updated Godfather of Hell, because I
yeah,
was interested in that. But
it's heartbreaking, but at least we found a way of doing it.
okay, well, that's good.
It's the Diamond situation was a scary time for a
Hmm.
lot of those sort of that size publisher.
Yeah.
And again, with Night of the Slashers that we did at Magma, it really hit Magma hard.
Hmm.
So the fact that we've got the books out and they're continuing is great. So I think the industry's having to find new ways to do things in the wake of that really. But
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, there will be more creator owned stuff on the horizon, but
Cool. Yeah.
the future will tell.
Yeah. Good to know. Um. Yeah. That answered my questions. What about you, Chris? Are you?
The only thing I really had left was like as kind of a wrap up question for people that obviously everybody should go out and pick up Gwenpool today as you're going to the comic shops, and we mentioned a few times. Is there anything else you can tell people to expect from this 5-issue series as it goes on in the next couple months?
Well, the wonderful world of comics means that people can go easily and find what's on the front cover of issue 3, which might have some spoilers if you've not got that. But yeah, so let's just say that Gwenpool has to sort of deal with life and death in various states over the next few issues. Yeah, I mean, it remains, as I said, it remains a Gwenpool book, but hopefully there's going to be a few moments in it as well where Gwenpool herself has to stand up and realize what it is to be part of one of these stories. So we're having a lot of fun with the character. It does actually verge into some horror stuff later on in the
Nice.
series. Um, and also we delve a bit more into Marvel history with it as well. I'll just leave it there.
Okay. Awesome.
And I'll say to the
Oh, and you
listeners
do
out
see
there,
another
Yeah.
Gwenpool that's completely different to all the Gwenpools than we've seen so far.
That's amazing.
Because
we
Gwenpool.
get the Gwenpool verse.
It's going to happen. That's basically what I'm aiming for. The Gwenverse
Oh
is
my
going to
God.
be, a mass war.
That's amazing.
I was gonna say to all the listeners out there too, as the guy who is usually ragging on Gwenpool, I thought it was a very good first issue. Like it was enjoyable,
Same here.
good action, and well written. So definitely check it out,
Thank you.
even if you're
Yeah.
not a Gwenpool fan.
Yep. No, agreed. Yeah, and Cavan, if our listeners and our viewers want to follow you and all the stuff you're putting out there, is there anywhere you want to send them?
Probably the best place to go is my website, which is the cavletter.com. Because basically I've decided that I am going to live like Batman and everything I do is going to have my name in front of it.
Nice.
So cavletter.com, which is my newsletter, my old school blog that I've started again recently because I've no idea where we're supposed to post these days on social network and why not. So
Understood.
that's probably the best place to find me. I am on Blue Sky, I'm on Instagram, but yeah, go to cavletter.com and that's definitely me and that's where I answer questions and all kinds of things.
And as always, everybody, you can look in the show notes down below for all of Cavan's social media that I could find, links to the website, and I'll even include the link to the previews catalog, Gwenpool #1, so you can see the cover yourself. So when you walk in the comic book shop, you know what you're looking for. So, Cavan, thanks so much for stopping by, man. It's
Thanks
been
for
a
having me.
pleasure talking to you.
Thanks.
It's been great, thank you. And also go and read Banana Man because it's great.
Gonna do.
Oh, we're doing that after this, yeah.
Yeah.